I think we're live.
And we're live.
The funny thing about doing that we didn't really consider was the fact that Tanner jumped into the video just a little bit later than everyone else. So I was like, all right, you ready to go live? And he's like, wait, the video's not over. It's like, oh, it's over for me.
And I was
Welcome to
asking
Scrappy
Mitch,
City Aquatics live stream, everyone.
welcome everybody. Good to see everybody after such a long travel over from the great video premiere that Mitch had. I will finish the
Yeah,
video
those are fun.
after the stream.
I've done a few of those premieres, just kind of playing around with it and seeing how they do. And I find them fun. I really like doing one of those premieres like in the middle of the day, and just watching the video for the first time with a few people. It's always fun. So I think we had about 16 people watching that at one time. So that was a lot of fun. Fishy on Tanktics is here. Welcome.
Yeah.
I saw more. Nano's here.
Nano, Big Cat, TJ Autocross. And I think that catches everybody for now. I know there was some more over at the premiere, so that they were going to mosey on over.
Yeah, I see quite a few are here. They've just not been in the chat yet. So while we're waiting on people to join us and for the conversation to start, we do want to take a moment and just say thank you to those of you who are on the rewatch. We really appreciate you taking time to listen or to watch this, and you all are awesome. Thank you once again, and I hope you'll go check out that video because that's what we're going to be talking about. So if you are watching this on the rewatch, maybe you should go look up the latest video from the channel. I should have the title of that video in front of me so I could tell you which one to go to, but it's the most recent one.
I've added CO2 to the 75-gallon planted tank.
There it is. There it is.
We've got Basement Aquatics with Dave. Good to see you, Dave.
Yeah, it's great to see Dave.
Well.
Dave's been busy.
And Dave has been busy working away. We got Nancy B in Tennessee. Hopefully seeing you. I think you said you were going to be at the Music City meeting first week, Saturday in August. So hopefully see you there.
Coral Works says that's against the law. You have to post the link. Are you talking about the video that I'm talking about? You know what? I probably should put it in the description of this live stream. But if you were talking about the link that was in the premiere that I posted my own link, I know for a fact that Zinni had it and was ready to use it, but I just happened to have it on me, so I posted it. And while we're mentioning, thank you to the moderators who are here. We always appreciate it. Taking care of any trash that finds their way into the chat. Not that we've ever had any problems, but thank you. I'm sure if there's been any comments deleted so far, it's been my own. Nancy says she will be there. Nancy had some lilies blooming this week. I saw over on the fish cord.
Oh, I did not see that. That's awesome. Lilies are fun.
My lilies did not survive the winter. Apparently, it never came up. So I pulled the planter. It was in a planter. Pulled the planter and pulled it out, and it was dead as could be. So I'm trash chat. I'm working on securing one or two more. I've actually got I've got one coming from somewhere. I don't know if it'll be any good or not. We'll see. Maybe that'll be a video. It'd be an experience. I ordered from a company, and then somebody told me, maybe you shouldn't order from them. They've got a bad track record. I looked to see if there was a way to cancel, and it looked like it was going to be an email and all of that stuff. You know how that goes. Oh, we shipped it while we were dealing with this. So we'll see how that goes. But and then there was somebody else local who happened to have one that I may end up getting.
I think I may also be able to help you out in that department.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Come the second weekend in August.
In August. Well, and the reason why I'm interested in getting a few lilies is I did take that 50-gallon stock pond that I got at CFI when we toured.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the ground now in the backyard.
Oh, awesome.
You work on that. And right now it doesn't have any filtration on it per se. just start circulating everything while I work on it. I threw some gravel that had been in the micro pond over in there, and there's some plants, of course, too. And I only put like 3 or 4 of those guppies from the micro pond over there to help maybe keep the mosquito population and stuff like that down while I work on it. When I worked on it over the weekend, and then it's almost impossible to get to it during the week. I have tried to get to it a few times, but I'm cutting a flower bed around it as well. That was part of the project, and so I had to get some yesterday. I got some topsoil and some compost to mix in with it and everything. And I've got a few plants that I'm going to plant around it, and just working on it. It's a fun project. I've started, I've recorded a few things for it, so there'll eventually be a video. Basement Aquatics. Dave says he's buffering. People are talking about how I offered for them to troll. That was not an invitation for trolling. We can all be civil around here.
Keep the mods on their toes. Give them a little bit of training.
Yeah. Let's see. Jennifer Weaver's here. Welcome, Jennifer Weaver.
Welcome. So
our topic's a little bit different in that we had the video. For some of you, maybe you've come in since and you were not here for the premiere of my latest video where I introduced the CO2 that I added to the tank. I talked about it a little bit. I do have an unboxing video from when I got that, and it's just a bunch of me being excited and having no idea what was going to happen. So, if you really want to see that embarrassing video, you can comment, and maybe if I get enough comments on that, not in the chat, comment on the video, maybe I'll do that unboxing. But if you're tired of unboxings and don't want one, then comment anyway, but let me know you don't want it.
Leave a comment either way.
Yeah, comment either way. If you don't comment, I'm going to assume you want whatever you don't want, whatever that is. That's my assumption. No buffering here. Must be up your way, Dave. You probably had to blow the dust off of the internet before you logged in. Haven't seen you in a while. It's good to see you around. Collaboration of Curiosities is here.
Welcome. Coro says the audio is clipping. Is it me or is it Mitch?
Stephen P says no buffer here. Just pure RO.
That's good. I like that.
I don't know if you're talking about audio or not. It's kind of, I hate wearing my glasses to these because in this corner I have to use a light or it's just too dark. And so whenever I look up, I get the halo effect. Collaboration Curiosity says they're in Australia with no problems. Oh, wow. Zenny's threatened to time people out. Oh no, what did we do? What did we cause? But yeah, I did. We want to be sure to put the disclaimer out there for everyone to know that the CO2 regulator was provided by Aquarium Co-op. They, like I said in the video, I've been a fan of them for a long time. I've been involved in various things on their website with their forums. I really love their live chat. They had a live chat for, I don't know if it was a few months or what. It was not a very long period of time. Probably was just like a quarter or something of a year. And that was a lot of fun. I was really bummed when they got rid of that. And that was when we went back to the forum. But then they started, the Facebook group existed, but they had stopped using it and they went back to it. And it was during the time that I was very active over on the, we had created the ETAA Facebook group. And so I was working on that, moderating, learning about that. And they reached out and asked if I would be interested in being a mod. So that put me kind of on their Friends of Aquarium Co-op stuff. And that's how I ended up getting the CO2 regulator sent to me. And, like I said, just very thankful for them and that because I had no plans of doing it yet. I was talking about it. If you've been watching this channel, you'll know that I've tried several times to do stem plants. and even had a few issues with some of my regular plants recently. I know that whenever I post on, whenever I share pictures of the 75-gallon, I'm always impressed with the number of people who talk about how good it looks, because to me, it's just like mediocre. But people say that it looks pretty good. So I've had success with plants. I wouldn't say that I haven't had success, but I've also had quite a few setbacks. And because of that, I've been curious if CO2 would take care of things for me. And it was during research for some of these live streams that I came across some of the conversations that Stephen P. and Kelly Foreman have had about KH and how that can impact your growth in your plants, and even your lack of growth in your plants. And as I looked into it more and more, and Tanner and I talked about it, I come to the realization that my KH is just so high that it was just setting me back, keeping me from being able to do what I wanted to do. Obviously, my swords and crypts are doing pretty good, and the Val's taking over, and those plants are doing great. But there are other plants I'd like to keep, and I've tried dosing schedules and light schedules, and looked at changing what I would dose and things like that. And it just seemed to be that CO2 was going to be the answer. So I started looking at options for CO2. And the Aquarium Co-op one is not the cheapest one out there. Someone talked about that during the video. I think was it the F Zone? That's the one that you and I think Cassandra had me looking at online.
Yeah, it's a good one. I have only ever used the CO2 art ones just because that's the ones that I bought and also found used.
Yeah.
Cassandra's saying her KH is 26 and her plants are fine. I'm
Yeah.
a little bit. I'm in Cassandra's boat as well. My KH is not that high, but it's pretty. It's 18 to 20, and the only plants I cannot grow are some of the more soft water species, like some of the more finicky area collins, and maybe some of the more finicky types of the Rotala macrandra.
With CO2 though, right?
Yes, with CO2. So CO2 definitely helps, but it doesn't, from my understanding, I could be wrong, it doesn't it only temporarily lowers your pH. It doesn't, it's a false pH drop, essentially.
Right. Yeah, well, and KH is the buffer. So KH is what makes pH swings a little safer. So the more KH you have, the less you really have to worry about your pH, about where it's at and how dangerous it might be. Now, that's not to say you can ignore it, but for someone with a lower KH, a swing is much more bigger deal, right? Did I got that correct?
Yeah, to an extent. And again, I could be understanding what I've read wrong, but no matter what your KH is, your pH is still going to drop basically the same amount according to the concentrate relative to the concentration of CO2 in the water. KH is definitely it's your buffer. So if you're adding in a bunch of tannins, something that will permanently lower your pH, that's when your KH is really going to help prevent those big swings.
Yeah. The KH, I'm not exactly sure on the science of why it was a big deal, but what I found was that the higher number without the use of CO2 could be the problem. The KH basically inhibits absorption of nutrients, CO2. So you got to kind of overcome that some. And that's what I think. This is kind of an experiment for me. I may find that totally not to have been the problem, but the only way to find out is to rule it out. So, but there are a number of them out there. I think Stephen named off a number of ones, a number of regulators that he has used, and even offered a favorite, the SR Aquaristic. Yeah.
I have not
his favorite
used theirs before.
Yeah. I've never heard of it. The problem is if you just overdose nutrients to account for that algae is like, And I've always tried to balance that with not increasing the nutrients too much. And so like with the 75, I was dosing twice my liquid fertilizer. and still was not, I didn't have a lot of algae at that point. As a matter of fact, when I dosed less fertilizer, I was getting more blackbeard. When I increased my fertilizer, and that's the thing for everyone to realize when we're talking about these things, everybody's water is different and everybody's experience is different. What I put in my tank's different than what you put in your tank. My substrate's different from your substrate. You know, the sand that I used is not the same as the sand you use. Everything that's in the tank is a factor to some degree of your experience. And so you can't listen to, you can't just take what someone like me says about, well, this is my experience. It could be an indicator to you. It could help you figure out what's going on with your system, but it's not necessarily going to be the same. You may have one factor that, makes it a much different experience for you. Definitely. Yeah. Cassandra says high KH makes it so you have to add more CO2 to achieve 30 parts per million. And that's definitely something that I've experienced with trying to, get this thing dialed in that it is taking more CO2 than I thought it would to get it saturated. And by the drop checker, and like I said in the video, the drop checker is not the be all. It's not everything. But by the drop checker, I am starting to get that really lime green color during the day. So I'm getting closer. But yeah, I'm watching the fish. Everybody seems to be doing well. I've not had any hiccups. The one thing that I've been cautious of, and like, I've told people that I'm doing it slowly. And then, a lot of people are like, just crank it up. And I get that, but I'm doing it slowly because I've never ran a CO2 regulator in a tank. And I was really cautious of what happens if that thing fails and it gases. Because I had that happen with the DIY. It happened all the time with the DIY. I had one that worked pretty good and it was fairly consistent. And I ended up having some pressure issues. And then I split it. Like I popped the cap, so I had to replace the caps. And when I did, I started having issues. And then someone gave me one that was supposed to, like, it was all metal and looked like it would be like very precise, very precise, not precision. It looked like it'd be very precise, and it dumped CO2 every time I filled it up. So I was, that was not good. And that's why I quit using DIY CO2. Would not recommend that one. I'll tell you the name, but it was all, foreign letters. I don't know what it was. I can't read it. Probably should take a screenshot of it and I can share it. But
good solid regulator makes world of difference.
Yes. And that was the DIY system that I'm talking about. I do have a regulator that Amazon sent me on the Vine program. And it does. I need to get it. I'll bring it to the next meeting and let you and Cassandra and a few others look at it and see what you think. I'm not willing to put it on a tank with fish in it. But I do need to test it out to get an idea of like, what would a bad one do? I think that could make a good video too. Then again, maybe it'll end up being a good one, and who knows? I doubt it, but
you got 2 tanks with CO2, but I definitely like, I prefer to do the go slow route with CO2 and a lot of things with tanks. Just CO2 every day, adjust it a little bit, small increments over a couple weeks to a month. You'll have it dialed in pretty good. I think one of the biggest things, like Cassandra was saying, if you can get a digital pH meter, that'll help quite a bit for the reading, just because those liquid tests can be, they get you ballpark, if you're 8, 7.5, or 7, but pH being logarithmic, it matters quite a bit more.
Yeah, and then you have the operator problems with those, because you get that one little extra drop that just will not stop and falls in, and you got to start all over again. Like that doesn't happen 3 or 4 times when I test.
Yeah, no,
I've got faulty bottles.
I am bad with some of the liquid tests. I'm just like, you know what? I don't even care what it is. Things are going well.
Yeah. Now I will say that currently where I'm at, again, drop checker is like a lime green. I am seeing a 1 to 1.2 change in pH. I didn't test it today, so I can't say for certain, but yesterday, I think you and I were talking about it, it was a 1.2 change. But I'm just kind of watching things, seeing how they go. I do need to start taking some more pictures of the tank and see how things are changing. I have seen some things start to. I can see some things growing. I noticed the super reds that I've about killed from you. I think they were the super reds.
Yeah.
They're not so super or red for me, but I think that's what they were when you gave them to me. They're starting to grow less leggy at the top.
Good.
And they've got a lot of leaves starting to form at the top. So that's definitely a plus. I am going to take Stephen P. and I think someone else, and I don't think it was here. I think it was over in the video. I missed the comment initially, and when I was scrolling back through, I saw it. So someone else pointed it out too. So I hate that I don't remember who it was, but someone else pointed out, put a second light on there, and I do still have the NiCrew light, so that is definitely a possibility. I may go ahead and do that tomorrow.
Yeah, I would. What you started running CO2? Was it last week?
Last Monday. Yep.
Last Monday.
Monday a week ago. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, you should by next week. You should notice at least a slight difference. I think that's what I was saying. But yeah, on the 120 to the second light thing, I run 3 lights on it, and that's not even. I could run more just because it needs a lot. I mean, you can use a lot of light when you start running CO2.
Yeah, and that's the thing though. Like I've told you, and I've told a few other people, and I think it was said in the video. I'm not necessarily wanting to grow a heaping mound of plants. That's not my goal. There's just plants that I'd like to keep that I've not been able to keep, and that is my goal right now. I'm sure I'll end up with running CO2, having more plants that I need, and that's a good thing too, because I have plenty of people I can share with. So Cassandra said that her KH was 26. Is that the same scale that we're using talking about the API test kit? Because like mine's an 8, and from what I understand, that's high. That's not. She's not putting 26 drops of that in there, are you? That's not what we need.
I don't know, because it could be in degrees or
that's what I'm thinking.
Milligram per liter.
I don't know. I don't know what the measurement on the API test kit is. I know you use the number of drops to tell where you're at.
Okay, so you're 26 drops. Is that if I'm understanding right?
Wow. So my 8 drops is like a 143, I think is the reading on that. So 26, that's like crazy. So yeah.
I was last time I did it, I was over 200 something. And then I got the test because I was like, oh, I'm curious to see what it is. And then I was like, you know what? Everything's doing fine. I'm not going to mess with anything just because it's.
Yeah. So I saw. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I said I know KH and GH are very crucial to some plants, but I read a lot of some people swear if you're doing a CO2 tank, you've got to have RO water and remineralize it. You don't.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. I noticed that Regina Phalanges is here, so I want to take a moment and say pivot.
Welcome.
Jenna P's here as well. And yeah, I haven't looked at a digital pH meter. I thought those were like difficult to calibrate, or at least you had to calibrate them every time you used them or something.
I mean, for most accurate results, you should, but it's not hard to calibrate most of them.
Yeah. Cassandra said that won't happen with a good regulator. Probably talking about when I was talking about it dumping, and that's the thing. I've never used a regulator, so I feel like the reviews and the information that I know about this regulator is that it won't dump. But I think it might have been Stephen P. I heard him talking. Maybe it was on a live stream where he actually had to send his back or had to reach out to them and had an issue. I didn't catch what the issue was. So, I mean, I think with anything, I worked sales and electronics for years, and even the best company has a dud every now and then. So, I mean, it can happen. You definitely want to keep watch of it until you know what you have. And right now, I don't know what I have. Zen says, I despise the API test. I do too. I avoid it with everything that I've got. I will definitely take a less than accurate reading from a test strip as long as it lets me know if I've got a problem. That's all I need to know is if I've got a problem. But I will say, and I you all know I love the co-op. That pH test on that test strip it does nothing for me. I never get a reading that I think is accurate on it, and I don't know why. And I've seen that from others. Everything else, the nitrates, good. The ammonia strip has had its problems, but it's been good on the tests that I've ran. And nitrite, I've only ever seen it that one time that I had the 75 have a spike in nitrite, which was weird. And I did double check that, and it was accurate. And then, of course, with the GH, I mean, I'm off the chart on GH. The color's like a lavender purple. So I'm not even on the color chart when it comes to that. And then the KH, to me, the KH and the pH are kind of, the KH, I can tell it's a big, I don't remember what it is. It's like between 120 and 160 is the variation between. And so I'm 143. So I definitely fall where I thought, but I was never going to get a precise number from that. And then with the pH, I read in the 7s every time. And when I go and I use the liquid kit, I get an 8. And so, there for a while, I was like, my pH is dropping and I can't figure out why. And I pulled out the liquid kit and my pH was fine. It was still in the 8s. So, I don't know why, but I will not use that nitrate test unless I absolutely have no other options.
Yeah, especially, with nitrates, it's really, you just need to know the range. Am I at 20? Yeah. Am I at 40? They're somewhere in between. That's all I check. And if it's a slightly darker than orange, I'm like, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I was right where we want to be.
Yep. That's how I am too. It's like, well, I'll leave this thing alone for a little while, because I am not orange. But yeah, and also with those test tubes, and this is not what I'd planned on talking about tonight, but with those test tubes, I have liquid work its way out of those things. It doesn't matter how I hold them, but the liquid works its way out, and that's going to change your readings, because what's the chances you're losing the exact same ratio of water and agent? Probably none. So, your readings are going to be off somewhat from that. There's just so many ways for there to be, people talk about how they don't use test strips because they're not precise. I'm not convinced the liquid kit is as precise as a lot of people think. I'm sure some of y'all are experts and you can get a precise reading. I am not one. And so the test strips work for me.
It is not very accurate. I think test strips and the liquid kits are pretty much equal until there's that tier, and then you get into actual testing instrumentation like the Hannas or the Hawks. That's where you really get accuracy. I think one of the biggest wastes of money recommended to new hobbyists is, you have to get the master test kit. You have to get all this. You need ammonia, and then you need just get a dip strip. That's
you just need to know if you need to do a water change in the beginning. That's really it. You just need to know if it's dangerous. And really, if you've, even if someone only, and I'm not going to recommend this. Never mind. I'm not even going to say it. Get both the ammonia and the nitrate and nitrite strips. Make sure you have it all. But in the very beginning, you're really chasing that ammonia is what you're got to watch out for in the very beginning. But get them both. It's just easier. That way you have it. Steven says the issue was the working pressure would drop during the day while in use, eventually reaching 0. So, that's not good. But they took care of it for him. I did see that. And Regina Phalange says she's had regulators work for years and then suddenly get wonky. So,
with any valve or anything like that, you're going to want to check it fairly regularly.
Yeah.
Check the regulator regularly. Say that 5 times
3 times fast.
Cassandra says master test should be called the beginner test kit. I agree.
Yeah, because as you become a master, you just don't need it anymore. It's one of those things where it's, again, I use it for pH. If I feel like if I'm watching pH, like, when I've been doing, when I've been trying to figure out things with the 75, and I've been, was running the DIY CO2 and trying to calibrate that, I was testing pH a lot, and I went through my pH agents. Because those, like I said, those strips, I just don't feel like they're very accurate on pH. Zen Ginger says, Cassandra, does it drip directly from limestone into your tanks? And that is a real issue in our area, is the limestone in the
Yeah,
water. It definitely is a
that
thing for
karst.
us. Yeah. Um, Cassandra says 28 GH here. So again, I guess that is the number of drops. Mine's over 300 is what it converts to, because yours is over 500 G8s. Yeah. I know mine's over 300. I don't know beyond that. I do have a test. I guess I could run that sometime if I was bored and wanted to. Yeah, built on limestone mine. Yeah, pH is 8.4. Yeah, your pH is higher than mine. I mean, my pH sits around 8.2. Is regular for me. I mean, I've seen it change a little bit, but 8.2 is normal for me. Yeah, and Zenny's right. Live bears love it here. They do. I'm trying to catch up with the chat. I just now got to the part you mentioned earlier. Yeah, Steven says Candy took care of it quickly, and that's one of the things I like about the co-op and why I was, excited to give the regulator a try. I know that if I like it and I tell you that I like it and you buy one and you have a problem, I know they'll take care of you. And I don't know other companies that will take care of you like that. Or not to say other companies won't, but I don't know companies that would take care of you like that. They don't call it Rocky Top for nothing. That's right. That's right. Where you get your corn from a jar. So yeah,
So
I
CO2.
felt like the regulator was real easy. What were you saying?
I said so CO2. Back to the.
So,
So you've
well,
added
so
you've added CO2 to the 75.
yep, that's a
Getting
true
that
statement.
rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
That is I was very excited for you when you sent me that text and said that you'd gotten the tank. I was like, oh, it's happening.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
for me, CO2 made one of the absolutely, I mean, it was like a breakthrough in
yeah.
with planted tanks. I had done, planted tanks for several, 5-6 years at that point. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I'm, growing a bunch of plants, but I want to grow that plant and I want to grow that plant.
Yeah.
Well, how do I do that? Everyone's like CO2. So I was like, I'm a little, really? I got to hook up a pressurized canister to my tank. And
Yep.
what do you mean I need what's a regulator?
Right.
And what it's very, it seems very complicated. And I hopefully you can attest to this, but once you get it hooked up, it's really, it's pretty simple.
Yeah. You know what's real funny is a friend of ours gave me that DIY kit, and they were like, if you're curious about CO2, try this first. And see, dip your toes in it and see if it's something you want to do. That was way more complicated than this
Yes.
regulator. I mean, there's a lot of people that, I've seen all the videos and stuff where you literally make your own DIY CO2. I don't even remember what they call it, but the DIY version. You make your own reactor. Is it a reactor? I don't know.
Yeah. Reactor.
Yeah. So you make your own and you do that. And they even have them now where they're like fancy, where you still do the DIY version, but it's in a fancy, with a regulator and everything. But all of that's way more complicated than this. Now, I will say the initial cost is higher. And, that's something in this video. I didn't have the initial cost of the regulator, which was why I did it now. And I did get this 5-pound tank for like $45, which to me seemed like a really good deal considering I was seeing $75 locally every time I'd look at one. 45 seemed like a really good deal. I've had people around the country that I've talked to say 45 isn't a great deal on a 5-pounder. And I expect I'll probably end up having to go with something bigger, but I'll at least have the 5-pound to get rid of and have a little bit of, I'll just step into the larger one. But the upfront cost, when you count the, $120 regulator and the $45 or to $100 tank, a couple $100, that's for a lot of us, a lot of people don't have a 75-gallon. A lot of people have a 40-gallon or so. $200 something is a setup. It's a whole nother tank. So, I mean, it is something that will cost you to get into, but like you were saying, for me, it was that it's not that I just want to crank out the plants. It's that there's plants I can't keep. I haven't been able to successfully keep. And this is just one of the steps into being successful with those, hopefully.
Yeah.
Cassandra, and that's exactly what I found. It's a good deal for a 5-pound, but a 20-pound would have only cost you 120 to 150. And the thing there is, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was you who said that you were paying about $20 for your 20-pound tank to be filled, and it's going to cost me about 16 to get this 5-pound filled. So in the long run, it will save money.
Yeah, I think they charge almost the same cost because it's really the money. At least a lot of the money is in the actual tank itself.
It's the labor. It's probably the labor.
Because I actually, speaking of CO2, I got all three. I have 2 5-pounds and a 15. 15-pound tank. And it was for the 3 tanks, and they're probably a little more expensive because it's close to downtown Nashville, but it's convenient for me. And it was right at $50 for 3 tanks.
3 tanks. Yeah, it cost me because. Now, I will say this, because when I started looking at the tank, the first thing that I was like, I was messaging, I think I messaged you. You were on vacation, so you didn't answer right away. And I totally understand. I'm not holding that against you. But I then went to the fish cord, and I had some great answers from people there. And I may have also posted in the ETAA. I think I may have. I was checking multiple places. What should I be looking for? Like, if I just go buy a tank, like, is any tank fine? Does it matter what it looks like? Does it matter? And, the only thing that you've got, because people may not know this, because I didn't, the only thing you got to be concerned with is they have to be hydro tested every 5 years. And that date is imprinted, or I don't know how they get it in there, but it is in there on the tank. That date is on the tank the last time it was tested. And before you can have it filled, it has to be tested every 5 years. Now, if you go to a place like I go to where they just swap out the tank, they didn't care. The tank that I bought was 1 year past its test. They didn't even look at it. They were like, all right, fine, I'll go get you one. And they took my pretty red tank that I knew I wasn't going to keep, and they took it back there, and they brought me a really, just cruddy looking old one that was full of CO2. And so that's how it works. But if you're going to a place that fills it for you, they're not going to fill it unless it's been tested. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking at used tanks, because a new tank can be pretty expensive. I even looked at some new tanks, and the new tanks were the same price as used tanks in my area. Other than the shipping was the only difference in cost.
Yep.
People were asked, like, $75 was about the same price that I could find online, but the shipping was another $15 or $20. I don't remember how much it was, but when you add the shipping to it, it's cheaper to get a used tank. And I knew I was going to be swapping it out, so it didn't make sense to buy a new one.
Definitely, yeah. Every tank that I've gotten has been from some individual who wanted to get into home brewing and decided that was not for them. And I was like, I will take that tank off your hands. I've gotten 2 of the tanks I got for like $30.
Yeah.
So it's definitely worth it. One of them was full for $30, and I was like, there we go.
Yeah. So you paid like 15. Well, no, you said Nashville, it's a little more to refill it. But yeah, the 5-pound is $16 for me. That's after taxes is like $16.50, something like that.
Yeah, let me do the math. 50 divided by 3. Oh, right at a little less than $17 per tank.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Regina Flange says that she pays $30 for a CO2 swap. Yeah, and I'm sure it's different all over the country. You definitely want to look at where you're going to be getting your CO2 and what those costs are going to look like. And like we said, and Cassandra said it in the chat, it's the same cost. So if you can fit a 20-pound tank underneath your aquarium or wherever you're going to keep it, and that's a good point to bring up. If you have kids or animals, you want to have it in a place that's secure, because if it gets knocked over, you may have a real problem. But you also are probably going to gas your tank if it gets knocked over, from what I understand.
Yes, if you are using a tank over like 10 pounds, try to have it with pipe straps, or not pipe straps, with straps to secure it. Because if it gets knocked over and that valve breaks, it's going to turn into a rocket with about 800 pounds of pressure on it, and it can go through I've seen pictures where it's gone through walls.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure that was one of the things that when because initially for me, CO2 was not something that I was really considering. I didn't want to do it. I wasn't interested in fooling with a regulator in the tank and then having to refill it and all that. And so I was going to do low tech, not low tech, what do you call it? Low energy plants for
Yeah.
as long as I could. And I was happy with them. And it wasn't until I just, I kept coming across these plants I wanted to try, and they just would melt for me. I could not get them to establish. And so hopefully that changes. I'm really excited about getting my hands on some plants that I've tried in the past and see if I can get anywhere with them. And Cassandra's talking about how the prices can even change in your city. There's some places that are 3 times. And there was somebody in the ETAA group recently that said they got it filled at a different gas place in Knoxville, and it was like less than $9. Now that place, um, that place, I looked up where it was, and I used to read meters in the city for a number of years, and so I know where it's at. But Holston's who I use, is just so convenient for me because they're right off
Yeah.
like literally you get off 275 off of the interstate. They're there at the exit, so I can go on my lunch break and get back before my lunch break is over. So that's super.
I went on lunch today, and it was very convenient. But CO2. It's definitely a little bit more complicated on the get go, can be, but it's really, once you get it dialed in, it's a set it and forget it.
Yeah.
After the initial dialing it in, changing tanks takes, turn the valve off, let it run out fully, take the regulator off. It took 5 minutes to get the CO2 back up and running.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I'm actually curious about with any regulator, because this is my first experience with a regulator, but also with the aquarium co-op regulator, is when I cut off the CO2 and I take it off of the tank and then I put the refilled tank on, how much adjusting will be necessary, or how much will it get off, or will be off from where it was, or will it kind of hold? Are things tight enough that it's going to hold where I had it?
Mine holds pretty dang close.
Yeah.
So what I do is, I'm assuming yours is the dual stage that has the 2 pressure gauges on it, one for the tank pressure and one for the working pressure. So I turn the CO2 tank off. I turn the main valve off, and then I turn off the working pressure. I shut the working pressure valve off. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, does the co-op one have a blow off valve?
No, like a pin that you would pull.
Yeah, so some of them have a little pin that you can pull down, and it lets off the extra pressure so you can take the regulator off. If it doesn't, just leave the solenoid on and let it dissipate, and you're fine.
Yeah.
And then all I do is,
I'll have to look. I don't recall one, but I'll have to look. I'm sure, if someone else is in here that has one, maybe they're a little more familiar. Where would it be? Would it be around the solenoid?
It should be right before the solenoid on the bottom.
Yeah,
maybe.
I don't think it has anything.
But anyway, it's fine if it doesn't. But all I do is I take off the regulator, hook the regulator up to the new tank, turn the new tank on, and then dial in the working pressure, and then the fine tune adjuster stays the same pretty much. I don't touch it.
Yeah. I'm going to pull up the website if it'll let me. Let's see. Yep, that's it. All right.
Looks like Stephen P is saying there's a pressure relief valve on the bottom that turns. That might be right. Is it right under the working pressure valve?
Let's see.
Aquarium Co-op PRV.
Well, that didn't help.
But the relief valve is definitely it's nice to have.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I see. It looks like that black the black knob right under the working
Oh,
pressure
okay.
valves. I think I'm
Oh,
picking
you
up
know
what
what? Yeah.
he's saying.
Okay.
So that's nice to have.
Okay. It turns. So it's not a pull, it's a turn. Okay.
Nice.
Good to know.
I do like
So
it. It looks almost identical to some of the CO2R ones and some of the others with the manifold.
yeah.
So
So
I've got the same one or same style, call it.
style. So what you're saying here is when I go to remove this tank, I need to make sure I turn that valve to release.
Yeah, you can go ahead and turn the actual your CO2 tank off fully, and then you
Right.
can release the pressure on the valve in the valve. Use it turning that, and that just it makes it easier and safer on the
I got you.
valve to remove it or the regulator to remove it.
I see what you're saying there. Okay. That makes sense. It's hard to turn, but it does turn. That's what Stephen B says. Okay, good to know. And Cassandra says that cheap regulators typically don't have those release valves. The other regulator that I have, the one that I never intended to put on my 75, does not have anything like that. I know because I've had it out, and it's a lot smaller too. I was really surprised by the size of the co-op's regulator in comparison to the only other one that I'd kind of handled. Yeah, I still want to test that thing and play with it and see what it does, but in a tank without fishes.
Yeah, it would be. I would like to set up a new tank with CO2 and just absolutely blast the heck out of it and get some crazy. Maybe do a plant only tank. I might do that. A small little 10-gallon plant only.
That could be a lot of fun. So I don't know if anyone's in the chat has any questions about getting started with CO2. I know a number of you are already doing CO2 from the conversations that have been going on, but I found it to be very easy to step into. It's kind of intimidating to think about, but then when the whole setup process was very easy, and I will say, I was really impressed with the instructions because I literally was able to go step by step following the instructions and had no problems whatsoever. And it even told me, if you hear a hiss, it's okay. So like, sometimes you get instructions and it's like one line and another line and you're like, wait a minute, how do I get from there to here? That's not going to work. And you've got to kind of read in between the lines. There is none of that. So the instructions are very well done. If nothing else, I would recommend it to someone new based off of that. Now, the other brands that are out there may have just as good as instructions, so I can't speak to that. But I can say that this one, I felt like it was easy to use.
I've got an industrial CO2 valve you can try. It's fun for making a jacuzzi. That's awesome.
Yeah.
that's awesome. Like for the beverage, the fountain drink, probably. Yep. That's cool.
Yeah.
CO2 is definitely, it is probably the biggest game changer you can do for a planted tank. It makes a insane difference and honestly makes it easy. It's like it is phenomenal how easy it is to grow some of the plants you can grow when using CO2.
So in my plan of events before this changed it, my plan of events was to start putting back I keep wanting to call it eco complete, and I know that's not correct. Eco planted. I was going to start buying up bags of eco planted and swap out the substrate in the 75. It's eco complete. They changed the name. Yeah.
I was looking.
They've changed the name, but apparently now this is what I was told by someone that works at a store. Apparently, they got in trouble with the name because it wasn't complete. And so they decided it was just going to be easier to change it to Eco Planted. But so
I didn't know that.
it's the same product, just new name. That's what I was told anyway.
Okay.
Totally could not be true. Who knows?
Yeah,
but
I did not know that.
Yeah, well, and that's why I keep trying to correct myself, because I have found it now as Eco Planted. But anyway, I hit my mic. That is something that I want to do next for the 75, is to get, even if, you and I have talked about it, even if I just swap out some of the substrate for it, that is something I still want to do. I definitely believe that you can make do with the root tabs and keep, in the inert substrate, and just fill it with root tabs on a regular basis. And I'll be playing with that now. Wasn't in the plans, but I'll be playing with that now with the CO2 and seeing if I can keep everything fed with nutrients and light to meet the CO2 and keep things balanced. So, that's a plus. But that was the next thing I had planned on doing was, I think in the 75, I was probably looking at about 5 or 6 bags if I wanted to do the whole substrate. And that might be next. That might be something I do next year. I don't think I'll do it this year now, because I want to play around with. I've got CO2 and I've got the gravel substrate and sand. The 75 has partial sand substrate on one side, so I'll play around with that a little bit, see how that works. Yeah, FishFam link is here, and just in case you didn't know, fishfam.link's a great place to go. It's a great resource to find out who's live streaming. I actually was using it just a moment ago because I wasn't sure if anybody else was going live after me. I believe everybody that is also live has been going live the same time that we have been. And I can look that up by going to fishfam.link, and I can see who's live now. I can pull up the calendar and see who's going to go live. And then I can also go through and search for live streams and channels with the, based on the things that I'm interested in. So it's a great resource.
Yes, fantastic.
Zenny's got the link.
Resource for the community.
Yeah, I love using it.
Thank you, Zenny.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't think we said it, but we did plan on going a little bit long as nobody else was going live in the 10 o'clock hour. I know last week, I think it was Jimmy P went live right after us. And so I sent everybody over there. But we figured we might go a little bit over since we gave up 20 minutes to the video. That was just kind of a test. I'd like to hear what you all thought about doing that. That's something we might do in the future. I don't know if YouTube necessarily likes that or not. We'll see. We'll see how it impacts their willingness to share the video. I think it's funny because sometimes I'll put out a video and YouTube will share it, and it's like, wow, that's really cool. And then other times it's like, why is this not being shared? Why am I having to share this everywhere I go?
Yeah.
Because YouTube won't do it. So it's just part of it. It's part of playing with it. And I find all that interesting, just trying to learn about the platform and everything. But CO2 is awesome. I'm excited to be trying it out. And I'm excited about the plants that I've wanted to keep and haven't been able to.
It's definitely, it opens up an entire new world. It's like you're opening the door to like Narnia.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is this place? You mean I can grow that plant? It's so exciting and fun. And it just adds a whole nother layer to the planted tank. And I'm real excited to speak about it a little bit about CO2 coming up here. Yeah,
you were talking about that. That reminded me. I don't remember if it was last night. It was one night this week. I think it was last night. Stephen P, their live stream, they had Rico with them. And what's funny is Rico has received the exact same products I have over the last couple of months. And so he's got the Aquarium Co-op light on a 75, and he's got the regulator going on a 75, just like I'm doing. And so he was over on their live stream talking about it. And somebody brought up, I think it was him. I think he brought up that he wanted to keep Monte Carlo. And I was like, I can keep Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
Because that's always been like, I'm not even going to try that. I know I can't do that. Who knows? Maybe my lighting is good enough. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we try it.
With that, you should be able to. Monte Carlo needs a good bit of light. I mean, but the thing about Monte Carlo is it can grow up.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling real adventurous, it can grow without substrate.
Yeah.
So you can stick it on driftwood.
Yeah.
But I've now come to have a love-hate. Before CO2, I was like, I want carpeting plants so bad. They're awesome.
Yeah.
After having several tanks with carpets, I'm like, they grow too fast for me. I can't keep up with, like, that's the one thing. If you're wanting a nice carpet, you have to be on top of trimming it or get a slow growing carpet plant.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest. It's Monte Carlo's again. It was one of those things where I had the realization yesterday that, that might be a possibility for me. Mm-hmm. It's never been a plant that I've ever thought about for that reason, but also I like my chain swords that I have. And the one thing that I hope this allows me to do is to crank up my light enough to keep my chain swords shorter, because I've always had a problem with my chain swords getting a little taller than I would like. I can get them to fill in, but they still get tall. So I'm hoping I can maybe keep them a little bit shorter, and that would create the ground cover that I would like. It's something I could share.
I do like the
Cassandra says, what's that?
Oh, I was
the Parva.
Cassandra's the Crypt Parva. I really like it. Very cool. I had you may have this plant, I don't know, and I unfortunately have not found it yet after the move. But it's crypt. It's a dwarf crypt. And I can't think of the name of it.
A dwarf.
Why can't I think of it? It's even smaller than Parva.
I didn't know there was anything smaller than Parva. What's funny is I have 2 Crypt Parva somewhere in the 75, and I have no idea where they're at.
That's just funny. Lost. Well, I can't think of it. I lost it as soon as I was going to say it. But anyways, it was smaller than Parva, and with it being that size, it might have gotten put in a bucket and forgotten about during the move. So I'm pretty sad about that. Man, what is the name of
that? Jenna P's got one. Crypt Nuri Rosen Maiden.
Rosen Maiden, beautiful crypt.
Stephen P says there is a Parva Mini. Oh, Nano said there's a Parva Mini. While you're looking that up, Cassandra did say that this was the first time she'd been to one, and she did like the format with the video first. And Zen's giving me a hard time about thinking I can learn YouTube's algorithm. I'm not saying I can learn it. I'm just saying it's fun to play around with it. I'm not trying to hit those numbers, so I can just kind of play with it and see what happens. I enjoy that.
I remember
and Zenny said she had pearlweed. She wanted it badly, and now she's removing it.
Crypt Pygmea.
Pygmea.
Yes. Oh, they have a red Pygmea. No, that's bigger. But anyway,
Surf City Cichlids is here. Welcome. Parva roots are bigger than Parva. I believe that. Absolutely. That was my experience with Parva. I promise I have some. If it didn't melt, I mean, I guess it could have melted. I have some lost in my chain swords.
Yeah. It gets lost real easy. I've only got it at the moment growing out in some tubs out on the patio.
And you know what? Regina Flanges and Zen Ginger is talking about pearlweed and reminding me that you gave me some pearlweed at some point and it melted. I wasn't able to keep pearlweed.
I was in the same boat. I was like, man, pearlweed looks so cool. It's such an awesome plant.
Yeah.
I can't get rid of it. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
I made the mistake. I put it in the 120 because I was like, I've never done a tank this large. My lighting's not great. I want to make sure something grows.
Yeah.
Well, it grows insanely crazy. So I'm actually thinking about pulling all of it out and replacing it with another
all
stem.
Of the pearlweed?
Yes.
I keep trying to use my mouse and apparently the battery's going dead in it. I need to replace it. I was going to look this up.
you can get a pot of parva, and you will be able to leave 2 pots of parva to your grandkids. That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
I think parva grows slower than Boos.
I agree. It definitely did for me.
The Marcellia
that brought back Marsala. And I know that's not what I was searching for.
It's almost like a dwarf 4-leaf clover.
Oh, okay. I've seen that.
Hirsuta, I think is the. Yeah, so to me it looks like, I looked up a picture of it again. It looks like a mix between Glossostigma, and then it throws these random like 4-leaf clover leaves.
Yeah. What's the plant you gave me that was a clover? It was a Japanese
Hydrocotyle tree. No, Hydrocotyle tripartita, Japan.
Yeah. I got very far with that plant, and then it just disappeared both times. Like it would grow. It was the weirdest thing. It would grow in the tank, and I would get this big mound of it, and then it would just let go of the substrate, and it would be gone.
Yeah, it has very, very fine roots.
Yeah. And once it got in the water column, I don't know if it just dispersed so much and then died off, but I have found pieces of it in the floating plants, which I got to find a good system for getting rid of those. I'm done with them.
which floating plants do you have?
Oh, duckweed. That's the only one. That's the only one I hate is the duckweed. I still remember the very first time I found a little piece of duckweed in the tank, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cute." No.
So I actually
like mogwai.
I learned something interesting about duckweed. I didn't realize it, but it actually has microscopic flowers and produces microscopic seeds, and those seeds can continue to grow more duckweed. So that's why you can completely clean out a tank of duckweed and more will pop up.
I always get a good laugh.
Made me very sad.
Yeah, that is a horror story. If I like, that's the kind of story you tell someone when you don't want them to go to sleep that night. Because I get laughs all the time, and I'm trying to be as truthful as I can be. Duckweed is a lifelong decision. Like if you decide to allow duckweed in, you have allowed duckweed in for the rest of your life. Whether you have an aquarium or not, I'm convinced it'll show up in a bathtub or a pot while you're boiling water one day or something. I can't stand it, and I get it all over my arms.
Wolfia, the smaller duckweed.
Now, Jenna P, I've heard you talk about not liking Sawasser Tang. I love Sawasser Tang, and I don't know why you all like. I don't feel like, maybe it's CO2. I've never had it grow so quickly that I couldn't control it. I've actually had the opposite. It's been slow going, and I don't know. I don't feel like I've ever had enough.
I think that I'm in the same boat with you on some Sawasser Tang. Mine, as far as a moss in general, you just can't get rid of. Which is not. I love moss. But Riccia is another one of the almost banes of my existence. I saw the Takashi Amano tank, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that Riccia looks so cool." Nobody ever told me that it breaks off in little tiny baby pieces, and you'll find it when you're brushing your teeth in the morning and growing out of your sink.
Nancy B, I Google searched Wolfia, and I'm convinced I've got it now. And that is the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I just had to close after you said that. I had to close that tab out.
That
I got scared.
So frightening. I think I'd get out of the hobby. I think I'd be done.
Another plant that, speaking of fragmenting plants, that I'm like tired of, that I used to really like, is guppy grass.
Yeah.
You just can't get, once it's in a tank, it's there forever.
Yeah, I have it in the 25, but it's not taking it. Like I've been given like large amounts of it. Like I have almost filled half the 25 with it one time. It was Kane. Kane brought it to, I think he brought it to one of the swaps, and he had a bunch left over. And he gave me like bags of it. He's like, "You have guppies, take this." And I was like, "Oh, I think that's pretty awesome. I'll enjoy that." And I put it in the tank. I might have a fistful. Like it just did not work for me. It all melted back.
I also got it from Kane. At the very first ETAA meeting. No, maybe not the first. It was one of the first.
I remember when he brought it because I wanted it and I didn't get any.
And right before vacation, I cleaned out, literally without water in the buckets, 2 5-gallon buckets from the 55. And now in a week and a half, about a quarter of the tank is already full of guppy grass.
Yeah. Well, and to me,
it's great for fry, but I want to see in the tank.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like, I used to love, now I'm forgetting what it was. Not water wisteria, the other one.
Water Sprite.
Water Sprite. I used to have Water Sprite in the 75, and I loved it, especially for all the mollies.
Yeah.
The molly fry and the shrimp. The shrimp were in there like crazy. And at some point, it just started melting on me and it disappeared. And I don't have any. I didn't get rid of it. I just don't have any.
I've got a good bit of it. I can maybe bring you some if you want.
Yeah, I don't know that I need it now.
It was CO2 is
That's what I'm thinking. It probably would. Yeah.
Because I've got it in the sun. And it grows. It grows tremendous. That's why I do it. I do guppy grass, and now I got rid of the guppy grass in the sun, but now I'm doing the Water Sprite, and it just goes. It's awesome.
So Jenna P says she doesn't dislike it; it just goes everywhere in your tank. Mine has stayed in a pretty good mass, but you're right. I do have little pieces of it here or there, and I collect it all and ball. I ball it up and put it down in the bottom, and it's full of shrimp. Full of those blue diamonds.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, that's the only place that I really find them in that tank anymore. So I'm letting it grow as much as it will. Riccia. Is that how you say that one?
Riccia.
Riccia. That makes more sense. I've heard Riccia.
Riccia Fluitans. Flutins.
That is interesting. Flutins. Yeah.
It's crystal wort. It's actually it's not it's commonly called a moss, but it's actually, I believe, a type of liverwort, which is pretty interesting.
Nancy B, the guppy grass and ammonia is a real thing, and that's what I used. Yeah. I put that Water Sprite in everything for that very reason. But yeah, no, I literally kept it for years. It was one of the first plants I had success with. And when I bought it at JKS, and it was in his really tall, what was that, a 90-gallon or maybe it was a 120 or something, but he has that one big tank that he always has plants in. It's real tall. And that stuff was like 2 feet tall. It's the tallest I've ever seen it. It was so big that when he put it in the bag, he had to bend it over to tie the bag off. And it broke on the way home. So I ended up with twice as many plants because that's how Water Sprite works.
Yep.
But I kept it for years, and then it just disappeared at some point. And I'll tell you, the tank, the 75 was doing really, really well until I added a tiger lotus. And when I added a tiger lotus, a bunch of plants around the tiger lotus did die back. Which is something that plant's known for. I did have plants die back. And after, I started having blackbeard algae and all kinds of issues to the point that I literally pulled it out of the tank and threw it in the backyard. And it was after that I had all kinds of issues since. Now, I'm not saying that one plant did it, but that plant did it. And I would love to have it. I'm afraid to try it again. Yeah, so Wasp tank is everywhere. Yeah, no, I realize it is because I find those little pieces. But in the 25 gallon doesn't really have any plants growing in it. It's just kind of, the Java fern is alive in there, and I'm just trying to leave it alone. So I don't do anything with that tank. It's funny. That's probably my most neglected tank. And everything's thriving in it. But I've never really tried to plant plants in it. That's not true. There's an Amazon sword in there that came out of the pond from last year, and it looks horrible. But everything else is doing great in there. All right, I think that's going to do it for us tonight. I appreciate everyone coming out. Thank you,
Yeah.
Tanner, for joining me as always. I love sitting here and talking with you.
Me
Miss it
too.
when you're away. It's after 10:30. We need to call it a night. Thank you to everyone. Those of you
Thank
on the
y'all.
rewatch. Thank you. Those of you in the chat. We really appreciate the conversation's been fun. Hope you enjoy your tanks, and we'll see you later.